Okay, good morning everyone, and Hazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Friday morning, Erev Shabbat Kodesh, my friends. And this Shabbat is a special Shabbat. This Shabbat is called, not only are we going to read the weekly reading of Perashat Shemini that we spoke about the last few days, and not only are we going to announce the upcoming Rosh Hodesh, which is going to be on Monday night, but we're also going to be reading a special reading called Perashat HaHodesh. And that means that we're going to read a special paragraph from Perashat Bo, and we're going to read it this week as well. So besides for taking out one Torah and reading the regular Perashah, we're going to take out a second Torah and we're going to read from it the last Aliyah, the last reading. The last guy who goes up is going to read a few lines from that second Torah, and this is called Perashat HaChodesh. He's going to read the Perashah dealing with HaChodesh. And I'll read it to you now. If you open to Perashat Bo, chapter 12, Vayomer Adonai Moshe ve'Aaron be'eret Mitzrayim lemor. This is when the Jews were still in Egypt, before the 10th plague. God says to Moshe and Aaron in Egypt, be'eret Mitzrayim, and he says to them, HaHodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Hodashim. This is the first of months. Rishon hu lachem lechodshe hashana. And this is the first month of the months of the year. And what God was telling Moshe is actually two things. On a simple level, he's telling Moshe that this is the new month and this is a new year. You know, the year, when is New Year's? New Year's is, in America, January 1st. But for the Jews, the first month is Nissan. And that's going to come up Monday night. It's going to be a new year. Adar, the month that we're in, is the last month of the year. This is the last month of the year. Now, I know that we also believe Rosh Hashanah is the new year. So that could sometimes get confusing, because what do you mean? Is it Rosh Hashanah or is it now? Is it Tishri? It's actually the two ends of the year. Tishri is it's the opposite. It's in 6 months from now, right? So which one is it? So there's different ways of explaining what it is, but simply on a simple level, very simple, not to complicate things. The month of Tishri, when it's Rosh Hashanah in September, that is the new year for the world, right? That's when we believe the world was created. That's when we celebrate the new year of the world. That's Rosh Hashanah. But as a nation, as Jews, our personal counting of the year, we start from now, from April, from Nissan. We count from Nissan. It's like saying what's your birthday? Your birthday could be July. If your birthday is July, it doesn't take away from the fact that the birthday of America is January 1st, right? There's New Year's for America, and then there's your personal New Year's when you were born is July. Two separate things. They don't interfere with each other. So there's the New Year's for the world, that's Tishri, Rosh Hashanah, and then there's the New Year's as Jews, that's Nisan. And on a simple level, God is saying Nisan is the first month. Actually, the name Nisan that we use is actually Bavel, Iraqi. Originally, they didn't have names. Originally, the name was 1, 2, 3. The first month, the second month, the third month. The earliest source that we find in Tanakh, I believe, for the names of the month is Megillat Esther. It says in Megillat Esther, the names of the month, because that's when we went into Galut, into Bavel. Originally, we didn't have names. Originally, it was month number 1, month number 2, month number 3. And the goal of the mitzvah is that Hashem wanted that the Jewish people should count from now on their months, 1, 2, and 3, right? Whatever it was before in Egypt, I don't know, I'm not a historian. But God says don't count like that anymore. Today we use January, February. But Hashem wanted the Jews to use 1, 2, 3. And why? Because whenever you say 1, you're always thinking, wait, 1 from what? 1 from when we left Egypt. Egypt. So it was an easy way of always remembering Misraim, right? Just like you have in Hebrew, the days of the week, same thing. Hayom Yom Rishon. Today's the first day of the week. Today's the second day of the week. Why we count like that? We're counting towards the 7th, towards Shabbat. So by counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and by having a 7 cycle, we're using the name, we're always looking forwards to Shabbat. So same thing in a year, we're looking forwards to Pesach. We're thinking of Pesach. Now, this changed once we reached Iraq, Bavel, and we left and we came back out of the first Galut. The Ramban Nachmanides points out that we no longer use 1, 2, 3. We use Nissan, Iyar, Sivan. Those are, like we said before, those are Persian names or Iraqi names. Someone told me that even till today, in Persian, it's Tammuz, is for the month of July or August, if I'm not mistaken. So the idea of changing to Iraqi names, the Ramban says it's the same thing, because now we date back and we think of the miracle of the Exodus from Bavel, from Iraq. The same way we think back to the Exodus of Passover, also Turkey. Okay, very good. So the same way we think back to the Exodus of Egypt, so we count 1, 2, 3. So now we use Persian months because we want to think back to the Exodus from Persia, when we came back to Israel after the destruction of the first temple. So that is on a simple level this mitzvah, the mitzvah of Nissan is the first month of the year, and that's how we count. That's how we count. Now, besides for that, there's also a second mitzvah in here, and that is the mitzvah of the new moon, of Hodesh, of Rosh Hodesh, where God said to Moshe, besides for the fact that this is the first month of the year, I'm also giving you a mitzvah of sanctifying the new month, right? Because to have a new year, to have new months, you need a system. And what's the system for Jews? It's based on the lunar calendar, okay? And that's not in the English calendar. The English calendar bases it on the sun, but we base our months on the moon, and it's a new month when we see a new moon. And the moon cycle around the earth is Kat Yav Tashsag, which is 29 days, 12 hours, and around 3 1/3 seconds. It takes the moon to go around the earth every single month. The cycle of the moon is 29 days and a half and 3 seconds, right? And now you obviously can't have half a month. You can't have 29 and a half days in a month. So we do 1 month 30, 1 month 29, 1 month 30, 1 month 29, because they add up, right? 30 and 29 becomes 59, which is the same as 29 and a half times 2. The problem of, and this is the system. The system, it used to be, the new month wasn't a calendar. The new month was decided, Kazeh Ra'eh Vekadesh. God said to Moshe, when you see a new, the tiniest sliver, when you see a tiny new crescent, when you see the tiniest part, that's a new month. So the moon waxes and wanes. The moon gets bigger and it gets smaller. And when it starts from the beginning of the month, the moon doesn't change in size, right? The moon is the moon. It's just what we could see of it, because the moon gets its light from the sun. So depending on where the moon is and where the sun is, you can't always see the moon in the sky, right? Or you could see more of it. So in the beginning of the month, the moon and the sun are right near each other. So in the sky, if the sun is behind the moon, okay, just think about it. Imagine the sun is the curtain over here, and the moon is here, and your planet Earth. So where is the sun shining on the moon? It's shining on the back of the moon. So you can't really see the moon, right? You can't see the shine. It's on the backside. Now 15 days later, when the moon is all the way over here, now imagine you're me, and don't get too excited. Imagine you're me, and the sun is the curtain, and the moon is here. So now, where is the sun shining? The sun is shining on the palm of my hand, and that I could see. I see actually a whole full circle. Okay? So as the moon gets closer to 180 degrees, you start seeing more and more and more and more and more until it's right here, and then you see a full moon. And then it gets smaller, till it's all the way back where it started, and you can't see any of it anymore. That's why, by the way, the Monday night's going to be Rosh Hodesh. That's a new moon. That means that the moon is going to be right here in between us and the sun. And that's why there's going to be a lunar eclipse, because it's going to go right in front and block the sun. Right? Now, it doesn't always align perfectly. Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's, right? So this year, the lunar eclipse is going to happen, the solar eclipse is going to happen, because the moon is going to be literally positioned right in between us and and the moon. The moon is going to be positioned between us and the sun. So it's going to block the light of the sun in the middle of the day for a few hours. Okay? So basically, the idea of Rosh Chodesh is when you see a new tiny in the night, when you see the tiniest part of the moon, that's a new month. And originally the system was that witnesses had to come to Bedin. Witnesses came to court in the day. Bedin wasn't open at night. It was closed in the night. So they came in the day and they said to the judges, they said, we saw last night a new moon. And the judges would sit them down and interrogate them one by one, privately, not in the audience of each other. And they would ask the first one, what'd you see? Where was it? How high in the sky? Ba ba ba. And then they would bring the second one in. What'd you see? Where was it? How high in the sky? What direction? Okay, different questions. If you're interested in all of this, there's many Mishnayot and Gemarot in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, page 20 and on, and even earlier, and it goes through all the different questions that we ask and cases that we ask. And Rabban Gamliel, he had like diagrams, and he would ask them, "What'd you see?" Okay, and this is the idea of Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, again, it means that we have a mitzvah to sanctify every month of the year, a new month. And Bedin gets up and they say, Mekudash, Mekudash, right? Holy, holy. And this is not only is it a mitzvah, it's the first mitzvah that we got as a nation. The first mitzvah that we got as a people is right here, in Egypt. Before we did Korban Pesach, before anything. The first mitzvah was sanctifying the new moon. And you could see how important of a mitzvah it was from the fact that the Greeks in Chanukah, they abolished three things. They abolished Rosh Chodesh, they abolished Milah, and they abolished Shabbat, right? They wanted to stop us from those three things. Now Shabbat is very important, and Milah is very important. But to say Rosh Chodesh, okay, so we don't have Rosh Chodesh. But you see how important it was. On a simple level, Rosh Chodesh represents the holidays. If you don't know when's Rosh Chodesh, then you don't know when's any holiday. The holidays are based off of Rosh Chodesh. What makes Pesach the 15th of the month is because you have a first of the month. If you don't know when's the first, you don't know when's the 15th. Actually, before the calendar, when they used to have the system, like we said, that witnesses had to come in. So if you lived in the middle of Jiddis, in the middle of nowhere, you actually had no idea what day was going to be Rosh Chodesh. You had an idea, kind of. Yeah, you knew it was going to be a window of 2 days, 3 days. Is it today, tomorrow? But you didn't know exactly which day. If you lived all the way, imagine you live all the way in Timbuktu and you didn't have a telephone. How'd you know all the way in Jerusalem what they decided? That's why the second that they sanctified the new month, quickly they would send out messengers all over exile to tell them when the new month was, so that they could prepare for the holidays, so they could know when's Rosh Hashanah, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, all the holidays. If you don't know when's Rosh Chodesh, you can't keep the holidays properly. Now you did have, historically, by the way, just interesting, you had people that tried to come and sabotage. As an example, there were a group of Jews called Tzedukim. The Tzedukim were the first reform movement, and they were started by a man by the name of Tzadok, hence the name Tzedukim. And they tried to get rid of Judaism or traditional Judaism, and they claimed that the Torah needs to be understood literally. So as an example, they wore tefillin right here, because it says between your eyes. They put it on their hand, because that's what it says. They took the Torah at face value. They sat in the dark on Shabbat, because it says you cannot light a fire. So they had cold sandwiches, and they sat in the dark. They didn't follow traditional, chachamim. They didn't believe in Torah She'Ba'al Peh. They followed only the Torah She'Bechtav, the written Torah. This is the Tzedukim. They lived in the time of Chanukah, actually. Okay, so it was in the time of around 200 BCE. Okay, around 200 BCE is when they lived, and during the Greeks, many Jews were becoming Hellenized. So the Tzedukim, they got popular. And they taught many things that were against, again, Chazal, and against the Torah She'Ba'al Peh. one of the things that they taught was that when the pasuk says that you should start counting the Omer, Mahorat Shabbat, the pasuk says, you should start counting the Omer from the day after Shabbat. We understand that to mean the day after Pesach. Shabbat in this pasuk, we take it to mean Pesach. So we start counting the Omer from the second day of Pesach. The Tzedukim say no. Shabbat. They start counting from Sunday. That's what it says, the day after Shabbat, which is Sunday. And so they would always count the Omer the day of Sunday, whenever that was, right after Passover. It didn't matter if Passover was a Monday or a Thursday, but they would do it on the Sunday that was immediately after Passover. They didn't go with us, with our counting. So sometimes they would hire witnesses to try to come into court to testify on the moon, so that it would wind up that Pesach would fall out on a Shabbat, so that we would end up doing like them, and it would give them a certain amount of gratification. And they would be able to show their supporters, look, you see, even the Orthodox Jews are doing like us. They're starting to count the Omer like us from the Sunday. Now, we weren't doing it because of Sunday. We were doing it because that's when Pesach fell out. But you see that they sometimes went so far as to hire fake witnesses to try to manipulate the moon, to try to testify in court that Rosh Hodesh was on like them. Okay, so this is how the system used to be. It used to be Rosh Chodesh was based on witnesses. Now, once the year 400 CE came, in that, or the 300s of CE, the 4th century Common Era, we lost that ability to count with the moon, because you also need Beit Din. You need rabbis that have smicha all the way back from Moshe Rabbeinu. We were losing smicha. Today, no rabbi has smicha. Today, when a rabbi says that he has smicha, he just means he has a degree, from rabbinical college, from Kolel. That's what it means, smicha today. He took a test or whatever it is. But real smicha means you were ordained by a teacher all the way back from Moshe Rabbeinu. Today, we don't have that type of smicha. So there was a great rabbi, his name was Hillel. Not Hillel and Shammai that you're thinking of. A second Hillel. He lived much later. Like we said, he lived in the year 350. This is after the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. The first Hillel lived during the Beit HaMikdash. So anyways, he and his Beit Din, they came out with something genius, which is they actually came out and they created a calendar for the rest of time, which is very complicated. Okay, and take my word for it. It means to sit down and to calculate everything that it should fall out properly for the rest of time. Now you may say, why is that so complicated? Just do, 1 month 29, 1 month 30, 1 month 29, 1 month 30. Why is that such a complicated task? It's a complicated task because as Jews, we have to not only worry about the lunar calendar, which is how we base our holidays on the moon, but we also have to take into account the solar calendar. Because the Torah requires that the holiday of Passover always falls out in Aviv, which is springtime, which is the end of March or April. Now, the problem's like this. The lunar calendar is 11 days shorter than the solar calendar. Like we said, the lunar calendar is 354 days. The solar calendar is 365 days. So that means that there's an 11-year discrepancy. So that means that if Pesach this year fell out in April 20th, or whatever it is, then next year it's going to be 11 days earlier. Next year Pesach will be April 9th. And the next year will be 11 days earlier. It'll be March 8th. And then 11 days earlier, March 17th. And then March 6th. So on and so forth. So you'll have, in 10 years, Pesach will be in December. Now, why is that a problem? Now, by the way, you should know that the Arabs also use the lunar calendar. And that's why for them Ramadan is now. And then in 10 years, Ramadan will be in, it'll be in December or whatever it is. So this is because they don't adjust. As Jews, we have to adjust our calendar to also, we have to take into account the sun. Because the Torah requires that, again, Pesach fall out always in the springtime. So how are you going to do that? Spring is a sun thing. Spring is based on the sun. How do you base a calendar on the moon and also worry about spring? The way we adjust is by having to add a leap year, an extra month every few years. So every few years, we go 11, 22, 33 days behind, so we add 30 days. So we go back, and then we keep adjusting. We keep adjusting. So the way we adjust, basically, is every 19 years, the moon and the sun realign. That's why your Hebrew birthday and your English birthday will always be every 19 years on the same day. Because every 19 years, everything realigns. So what we do is every 19 years, if you do the math, it's around 210, right? We're 19 times 11. So every 210, we lose 210. So how do you make up 210 days? We add 7 months every 19 years. So 7 times 30 days is 210. Okay? So this is how as the Torah requires, we were constantly calculating both the moon and the sun. So this is why Hillel's job was very, very complicated. Hillel had to think about the rest of time, making sure, and he did. And he set up this calendar that till today we use this calendar. So today when you go on your calendar app and you know when Pesach's going to be, if you want to look at Pesach in the year for your son's bar mitzvah in 13 years from now, you can look it up. You can know exactly when Pesach's going to be. We don't use any more witnesses. Today we use the calendar that was set up for the rest of time, a genius calendar. And this calendar was only disputed once actually. It was disputed in the 8th century by a rabbi by the name of Bet Meir. In the 8th century, he came and he according to his opinion, Hillel was off by 1 day. Now you say, okay, what's the big deal? A big deal is a big deal. Because now, if you're off by 1 day, that means Yom Kippur, you're fasting on the wrong day. That means Pesach, you're eating chametz on the wrong day. That means everything's 1 day off. It's a big deal. So he had many students, and they decided that they're going to keep a different calendar. They kept a different calendar. This was a one-time thing in Jewish history, 8th century. It lasted for around 7 years, okay? A few years it lasted. His contemporary was Rav Saadia Gaon, which is a huge rabbi, and he argued on the Bet Meir, and he justified the first calendar. And that is, till today, what we follow is the original calendar of Hillel, and that's been undisputed for 1100 years, 1200 years. No, there aren't two calendars today in the Jewish world. There's only one calendar. It's the calendar that we follow, and it's the power that we have as Jews, that we are in control of our months, of our holidays, and not only that, but Hashem Himself, so to speak, says that you sanctify the holiday, and I'll follow you. That means that even if the Jews are off, even if our calculations are off, but Hashem, He goes to His calendar and crosses it out and He says, I'm going to change it because the Jews are doing it this way. So we can never be wrong on when Pesach is supposed to be, because actually God gave us the power. We've got the power, right? We've got the power. We have the power to decide when Rosh Hodesh will be, when the month will be, and this is what we follow. We follow every year. From the year 300 CE and on, this systematic calendar. So the Greeks tried to corrupt it, because if you don't have Rosh Chodesh, then you don't have holidays. But on a deeper level, Rosh Chodesh also symbolizes the concept of renewal, my friends. The idea of renewal is a very powerful concept as for Jews, that we could always start over, and we should never allow our mistakes of the past to define us. And maybe we were once upon a time slaves, but now we are free. And this is what Rosh Chodesh symbolizes: to rise up from nothing and to become something. That's what we taught the world, and that's something that's very, very important. It's something that's very, very powerful. And so this is what we're going to be reading tomorrow in the synagogue. We're going to be reading about HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim, which again means two things. It means, number one, on the simple pshat, that Nissan is the first month of the year. So Happy New Year's, everybody. And it's very amazing that this year, again, it's going to be Monday night. It's going to be, again, the same right next to the solar eclipse that's going to be happening on Monday. So The moon is going to be showing itself very, very beautifully. Usually you can't see the moon on Rosh Hodesh. It's a new moon. You can't see it. It's going to be a tiny thing in the sky. But this Monday we're going to see the moon loud and clear, my friends. It's going to be right there, blocking the sun, and we're all going to see that moon, that beautiful moon, the black of the moon, right? Besides for that, we're also being taught by the pasuk the importance of sanctifying the month and sanctifying time. And this is such a powerful message as we go into freedom. A slave, his time is not his. A slave, his time belongs to other people. He is not in control of time. He has to do what other people tell him to do. So when God gives us the mitzvah of Rosh Hodesh, as a slave, it indicates that now our time is ours. We are in charge of time and we get to decide what we want to do with it. And I think as we read tomorrow in synagogue, I think it's a beautiful opportunity to really pause and reflect and ask ourselves, what are we doing with our time? What are we using it for? Unfortunately, sometimes we become slaves to time. I have to do this, I have to be here, I have to go there. But then opposite, you don't have to do anything. You do what you want. You decide what you want to do, right? You decide what you want to do. You're in control of time. Don't let time be in control of you. Okay, we'll stop over here, my friends. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom, a Hodesh, Tov, Umvorach. And we'll see you all, Bezat Hashem, next week. Bye-bye.